recording's going. Oh, here we go. Good evening, councilors, public staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for a committee of the whole to order. It's been moved by Councillor King that the agenda for the November 2nd, 2015 regular meeting of committee of the whole be adopted. Are there any changes to the agenda? Councillor Durley?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Seeing that one of the members of the audience is we're dealing with issues from them, I'd like to move 512 and 513 up to first on the agenda, please.
Okay, thank you. I'll call for the vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Any other changes to the agenda? There being none, I'll call the question as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Do any members of council have any conflicts of interest they need to disclose? I need to disclose one regarding 513, and that's a recommendation report regarding zoning amendment application for 792 Welland Road. I am in the circulation area, that is former fire station number 2 in Fenwick. I am in the circulation area on the zoning amendment. I own property in that area and will have to declare a conflict. So I would ask Councillor Durley to chair that portion of the meeting. And can it be noted that there were no other conflicts? Thank you. We'll now deal with 512, the recommendation report regarding zoning bylaw amendment Davis Heights. And it has been moved by Councillor Papp. The Committee of the Whole receives the issue summary report for information that pertains to application file number AM0411 and 26CD19. Do I have to say all these numbers? 1101 regarding 1535 Hay Street, known as Davis Heights, and that the plan of vacant land condominium for Davis Heights be draft approved subject to the conditions in Appendix 36. That the mayor or designate be authorized to sign the draft plan as approved 20 days after notice of council's decision has been given as required by the Planning Act, providing no appeals to the decision have been lodged. That draft approval be given for 3 years, after which approval will lapse unless an extension is requested by the developer and granted by council. That council direct planning staff to prepare the bylaw to amend a portion of the land located on the east side of Hay Street, south of Brewerton Boulevard, municipally referred to as 1535 Hay Street, from Residential 1 with a holding provision R1H, Residential 1 site-specific exemption 209 with a holding provision R1209H, and Residential 1 site-specific exemption 210 with a holding provision R1210H to a site-specific residential multiple RM1 zone for council's consideration, and that council approve the zoning bylaw. Questions, comments? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarity through you to our Director of Planning, I note that the applicant asked that many of the conditions that were expressed by the various agencies would be included and dealt with at the site plan stage as opposed to the draft plan stage. Is that being supported, or because there wasn't unanimity among the commenting agencies, we're not able to do that?
Madam Director?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Those agencies that were supportive of having the conditions included in the site plan process versus the draft plan process, we have agreed to do that. Those agencies that were not supportive of that, we've left their conditions in as the draft plan of condominium.
Thank you for that clarity.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councillor?
Yes, I noticed in one part of the report, I don't have the appendix number up, that the stormwater was going to be commented on by the NCPA, but I never did find the report. Is it in here, or have they reported on it?
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority is a commenting agency on the stormwater management report. We did get that detailed report as part of the site plan, and they are reviewing the stormwater management, the overall plan and process, and they will be an approval authority for that.
So they haven't It's not in this report, though.
It's not in this one, it'll be tied to the site plan.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others? So I was gonna ask about road widths, but I get, is that site plan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it is at site plan that we
Okay.
would deal with the road widths.
All right, thank you very much. I'll deal with it then. Any other questions? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And now I'll turn it over to Councillor Durley. Do you want to do it there, John?
Sure.
And I'm in a conflict, so I need to leave, excuse me.
Moved by Councillor Kersey that the Committee of the Whole receives this issue summary report for information as it pertains to application file number AM 0315 regarding 792 Welland Road. That committee direct planning staff to prepare the bylaw to amend the portion of the land located on the south side of Welland Road, east of Church Street, municipally referred to as 792 Welland Road, from public P to neighborhood commercial NC zone with the holding H provision for council's consideration, and that council approve the zoning bylaw. Questions or comments? Councilor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking for where I saw it, but let me just describe it. I think I read somewhere in this that the residential portion of this is going to be restricted to 50% of the total project. I'm just wondering whether I can get some clarification with regard to that. Does that mean then that that any further development of that building would have to stop at one additional story for apartments, or just exactly what does all that mean?
I'll go
Thank you, Mr.
through
Chair.
to the Director of Planning, perhaps, and clarification on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. That is the standard requirement for the neighborhood commercial zone. And so what that would mean is 50% of the floor area, I believe it's floor area as opposed to stories, can be devoted to the residential use. And so if they're going to be adding on to the building, it would mean that there could be additional residential use. We don't have a specific proposal at this stage that we're dealing with. So we left it according to what these, kind of standard requirements are for the neighborhood commercial zone.
So the details will come forward as the plan comes forward?
Yes, and if for some reason that the plans are contemplating a greater proportion of the site to be residential, then there would be the opportunity to go through a minor variance process to address that.
Okay, Councillor?
Okay, so as I understand it, then the final product, unless there's a minor variance allowed, is 50-50 floor area, basically commercial and residential.
Yes, under
But
our,
it can be overcome with a minor variance.
that's correct.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
No, I'm good.
Councillor Kersey?
I don't know quite how to phrase this, but there are a number of issues that have been raised in the report with respect to the rezoning and with respect to putting the H, the holding symbol on the rezoning. And I think some of those issues should be discussed, Mr. Chair, in a in-camera session, because they may impact something that is involving the town in a legal matter and a contract matter. So I don't know that we should discuss that before we go ahead and approve this, or whether we can approve it and have that discussion after.
Mr. CAO, can you perhaps enlighten us on the concern brought forward from the councillor?
I'm not specifically sure what the councilor's referring to, so I don't know if the director of planning could comment or.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are two conditions with respect to the holding zone that are required to be, I guess, completed or resolved before the holding zone can be lifted. One of those has to do with the requirement for an archaeological assessment. And the second one is with respect to a record of site condition, and typically that's required prior to the building permit stage. The town did undertake to do a phase 1 environmental site assessment, and the conclusions of that report recommended that there be some further sampling done in specific areas. And so there would be the requirement for that, and then depending on what that results in, there would be the record of site condition.
Would this be done by the town or by the owner?
My understanding is that, I don't have full carriage of the conditions of the purchase and sale agreement, but my understanding is those two items would be done by the owner.
Thank you. Does that help, Councillor Kersey, or is there something that you want to build
Well,
on?
I was trying to avoid that sort of discussion in public because I think it's a legal matter that may have implications on the contract that we've entered into. So, yeah, I don't know whether we should continue with the discussion. If it's wide open, then let's discuss it. To your call, Mr. Chair.
Just perhaps some advice, this is open, or the terms of the sale, or is that public information? That's public information, so.
So the contract is public information at this point?
My
So the town,
understanding.
okay, so the town agreed to rezone the property,
Yes.
not rezone it with an H, with a holding
Well,
provision.
the H goes on it, as the planning director said, for more reasons than one, and that's so that, until such time as all conditions are met, and the H comes off and he can use it.
Thanks for that clarity, Mr. Chair, that's exactly where I'm going. If we've agreed to rezone the property at our cost, so the implications are that we as a town will be picking up the cost for the archaeological and the phase 2, and if that phase 2 tells us there's remediation necessary, we're going to be on the hook for the remediation as well, are we?
Madam Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, the process of lifting the H is a very straightforward process. There's no public consultation or public meeting. You just have to give notice that you lift the H when those conditions have been met. My understanding is that these things are not the town's responsibility, that they would be the responsibility of the new owner, and by rezoning the lands to the neighborhood commercial zone category with the H, you've effectively rezoned the land, so you are setting the stage of what the future land use would be for those properties, or that property. It's only one property, and so my understanding would be is that you fulfilled your obligation for the purchase and sale.
That was the only condition of sale, was the change of zoning.
That's my understanding. I don't know, maybe the CAO can
don't think that's the
clarify
case.
if I'm incorrect.
Suing on for specific performance.
Mr. CAO, is that the only condition that we rezone the property?
Also the record of site condition, I believe that we had to do stage 1 as well.
And the stage 1. Okay, the stage 1 was all we had to do.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, is that cleared up?
Okay.
If there's more than stage 1, then it goes to the owner of the property, from what I'm understanding or what I'm hearing here.
Or the offer falls apart.
Yeah, possibly.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Councilor Riviere?
To build on that discussion, so I understand it, so in the event that the conditions cannot be met satisfactorily, we've still done our bit, and the contract still goes ahead. Or, as Councillor Kersey has pointed out, maybe people back out of the deal. Is that what I'm hearing?
I believe the closing date is set for December 1st or something, is that? That's the closing date, so. Okay, Madam Director, can you perhaps direct some clarity to Councilor Riviere?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the closing date on the purchase and sale agreement was extended to, I believe, December 1st. Perhaps Madam Treasurer can clarify that, but,
I'm not privy to that.
oh, sorry, okay. But I believe it was extended to December 1st.
I heard that date as well, yeah, okay.
But again, if those conditions cannot be met to remove the holding provision, or that there's a lot of work indicated as a result of that, we've still done our bit. Just by passing this today, we're done. We've met our requirement.
My understanding is, and from what I'm hearing here, that's exactly right, the holding, the zoning has changed and we've done the phase one.
Mr. Chairman, yes, by adopting this report and passing the zoning bylaw amendment, you would have rezoned the property, and we've done the first phase of the environmental site assessment.
Okay? No?
But she's more expert at it than I am, so
Okay, other questions or comments? Councilor Kersey?
my comment would be, if I was on the other side and I was purchasing a piece of property and the vendor was saying to me, I will rezone the property for you, to have a rezoning with contingencies attached or conditions attached is not rezoning the property. It's rezoning the property with conditions. And that's not what we've agreed to. So that's the clarity that I'm trying to
Well,
get.
I think what we agreed to, from what I'm understanding from the CAO and from the director, is the fact that we agreed to rezone the property, which this is dealing with, and provide the stage one archaeological study. That was the two conditions that were involved. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It was not the archaeological, it is the condition of site assessment.
Okay, just the condition site assessment. Okay.
So at what point can we get a condition of site report filed with the ministry? Is it after the phase one, or is it after the phase two, if that comes up clean?
I don't know.
Mr. Chair, through you, it would be after the second environmental site assessment. The first phase of the environmental site assessment has recommended that there be some additional site investigations done.
Yeah, exactly. Then your point is well taken.
So, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
to put us into this sort of circuitous discussion, perhaps we could refer this back to staff to bring a report at our very next meeting, P&P perhaps, to get clarity around that, have legal look at it, and give us some recommendation with respect to our position. I would give me a greater degree of comfort, not a reflection on our director's expertise in any way.
Madam Clerk, you would call for a referral on that, and that could be done with the understanding of direction that's intended?
Direction. I have the direction, Mr.
You
Chair.
have the direction? Okay. So
You want to refer
you're
back?
making a motion to refer this back to staff?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions or comments about the amendment or the referral? Councilor Pat?
Mr. Deputy Mayor, just so I'm clear, if it's referred back and comes back on November the 16th, would we in fact be actually, notwithstanding the staff report, approving it through council or through PFA if in fact, as I understand it, the deal closes December 1st? So wouldn't we want to
Bring it to council.
bring it to council? That's what I'm getting at, to simplistically bring it to council.
Yeah.
Then we can deal with it there.
Council, that's in order, Madam Clerk?
Is it going to close the deal?
If that's what the direction is, that's in order.
Okay.
I would, then we don't have to go.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. That's all. Thank you, Mr.
Consensus of that? No objections to that?
Bring it to council.
Okay, referred back to council. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. And if we could bring Mr. Mayor back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Members of council, the next item has been moved by Councillor Junkin that Committee of the Whole receive the issue summary report for information as pertains to application file number PLC 0415 for block, I'm I'm sorry, we missed
Sorry, I
one.
think we're out of order.
I had it in order.
Gotta go back, yeah.
We do have to go back to the site plan control application received for 483 Highway 20 West. Thank you very much. Been moved by Councillor Durley. The Committee of the Whole receives the issue summary report for information as it pertains to application file number SP 0415, part of Lot 9, Concession 7, municipally known as 483 Highway 20 West. And further, the committee direct planning staff to prepare the site plan agreement and bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to enter into a site plan agreement between the town of Pelham and Minor Brothers Farm Supply Limited. Questions, comments? Looks like a great addition to the town. Huge operation, 8,000 square foot facility. Pleased that we're at this stage. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Now we move to planning item number 4, which is the Wilson Crossing piece that I started earlier. So it has been moved by Councillor Junkin. The Committee of the Whole received the issue summary report for information as it pertains to application file number PLC 0415, Block 12, 59M 405, and part of Block 31, 59M 358, depicted as parts 1 to 7 on 59R 15429, municipally known as 72, 74, and 76 Wilson Crossing, and the Committee of the Whole direct planning staff to prepare the part lock control exemptions for these blocks, municipally known as 72, 74, and 76 Wilson Crossing, for council's consideration. And further, that council approve the part lock control exemption bylaw. Questions, comments? Councillor Accursi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, very quick question to our Director of Planning. Block 12 is self-evident. Block 31, could you bring some clarity to that and why we are doing what we're doing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. If you looked on Appendix 2, you'll see the actual reference plan that was prepared. Those two blocks are coming together to form what will be the 3 townhouse lots. So Block 12 is a back long sliver of land at the rear that's being part of the overall townhouse development.
Thank you.
Thank you. Others? There being no others, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Jungan that Committee of the Whole received the October 2015 Planning and Development Services Report for information. Questions, comments for the Director? Gotta get the report here. There it is.
Find it.
Anyone? Just a couple of things. Interesting. I'm trying to remember where it was that there was a discussion about housing starts and the importance of housing starts. I wondered how difficult it might be for the director to include sort of an historic chart in a future report, maybe not next month, but maybe after, just sort of what do the housing starts in our community look like? I think council was perhaps looking for that when we were looking at numbers of new dwelling units, which is separated from other building permits with the recognition that there might be a pool as a building permit or a tent or a fence, or not a fence, but a garage. So we're looking at the number of dwelling units, but maybe just some historic numbers on housing starts might be interesting to follow. Is that possible to get in an easy way?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, we can provide that information to you, and then we could probably do a summary of the year and, and then the month, and you have the year-to-date and what happened in this past month.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, if that's okay with council colleagues. Okay, anything further on the planning report? Councilor Powell.
Quickly through you to the Director, comprehensive zoning bylaw, target date? I've been here a long time, and I'm still waiting.
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, that's a great question. I'm certainly hoping we'll have a draft of the comprehensive zoning bylaw out for, public review and circulation to internally to town departments and outside agencies. Before summer.
Okay. So we're halfway through next year.
Yeah.
Good, okay, that's good. That's all, I just keep it moving.
Okay, thank you. Others? Thank you. There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next item has been moved by Councillor Junkin. Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the 2015 third quarter revenue and expenditure report be received for information. Questions, comments? We okay with this?
Okay with all of it.
We ready for the question? Councillor Papp?
So soon through you, Madam Treasurer, we'll get an idea next month or so what we're projecting out for the end of the year? Or are you going to wait till December to let us know?
Through you, Mr. Mayor,
we
usually
on
don't do a
target?
projection till after the year end, just
Yeah.
to make sure that we get all the adjustments into the schedule and so forth, so. But we are monitoring, as I pointed
Right.
out in the revenue side, they're a little bit lower than anticipated at this time, so we are monitoring that so that we can react accordingly.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next item has been moved by Councillor Kersey. The Committee of the Whole recommend to Council the 2015 Capital Project Update Report be received for information. Questions, comments? Councillor Ribbiak.
Yeah, just a question around clarification. Invitation to tender 2015 PW04. This has to do with the snow clearing program. There were two tenders and they were grossly apart. It's almost like they were,
Sorry, we're not there yet.
oh, we're not there yet.
Nope.
I'll
it's-
table my
that's-
question until we get.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you. We're on the capital,
we're on the capital. We're not
capital
there
project
yet.
update report, 2 pages, specific projects.
Okay.
It is a bit confusing because then the next one is that report, so. Okay, gonna call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Actually, I think the next report is this 3D mapping, if that's correct. It has been moved by Councillor King, that council approve the amount of $25,440 to implement 3D inventory system, and that the firm Huron Geometrics, Inc. be retained to provide the service. The amount be funded from the Information Technology Reserve. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if our treasurer, I assume you brought this report, if you might be able to expand on this 3D mapping. Is it in fact to show the height, the depth of the, let's deal with, let's say, a sewer pipe. So you want to know the depth and the exact location in the street, et cetera, et cetera?
It's through you, Mr. Mayor. It will give us all of that GIS location format, the land, exactly where it sits within the ground. It will map that and layer it on top of the AutoCAD type of format that we're using, so that anybody that's looking at this this picture, which we'll have included in our capital asset management plan, or click on that picture, will get all the information about that linear asset, and that's all the pipes underground, even the valves that are attaching to the pipes and so forth. So right now we're finding that there's some gaps in the asset the assets that we have with respect to knowing exactly what asset is being touched when a major infrastructure project is done. This will eliminate that completely, where we will be able to define the assets to the through the RFP process, and then ask for that given back down to us in electronic format, where we can update our system that way, as opposed to taking weeks to come through a project. Something like Pelham or the Fenwick revitalization can take volumes of time to try to identify what assets have been done in the system, because we're using one-dimensional Excel spreadsheets or spreadsheets from the system to try and come up with those. So it really is going to transform our capital asset management plan into a whole new realm and really streamline the process for how we maintain our assets throughout the town.
Thank you. Counselor?
So, I have a couple of questions. So, Madam Treasurer, will the facilities also be included, parks, all of this sort of thing in the 3D mapping?
Absolutely. They will. They're a little bit easier to identify, but right now, they're taking all the assets that we have in the financial management system. They're going to create a 3D version of those assets. And then the next phase that I would be bringing back to council in the budget process for next year is that they will also do a drive-by using this technology that captures all the maps in or all the facilities in the street to find out what we're missing. And also aligning with some of the projects that Public Works wanted to do with respect to street signs, reflections and stuff like that. They are able to even determine those levels of, is a sign working for us? Is it something that we might want to look at for a liability issue with respect to how the signs are working? So we are working together closely with the Public Works Department in how this can facilitate all of the processes in-house, but definitely will include all of those facilities as well. Anything that's an asset, a sign, hydrants.
Thank you. Counselor?
Okay, and I guess I had a couple, but I think you've answered it. How does this tie in with the PSR system then? Because that seemed to be a big component of having this 3D mapping and tying it into the PSR.
Madam Treasurer?
Go ahead.
So part of the process is that we have a work order system in the financial management system, but the PSR system isn't creating work orders. It's just creating the email that goes to the staff members. So through the brainstorming of the committee, this working group, and also working with Ian Lucas, he has developed a file, an interface, as you can call it, and that will create work orders from everything that's generated through PSR. So that's the external public going in and creating a PSR system, or us as staff going in and creating a PSR. It takes the back end and creates a work order that we can then upload right into our financial management system and better show the betterment that was done to that asset. So if they go and repair a road and there's, $250 worth of work or $2,000 worth of work done, that's created through the PSR system. The back end then creates a work order, automatically uploads into, so the process is much more streamlined, and also it eliminates the manual system that we're currently doing with the work orders being done in paper format. So then everybody has access to the information, so there's no disconnect between finance and public works, and we are also able to do it in one stop, like it's all there and done with one push of a button saying upload to the FATM system.
Sounds great. Thank you. Counselor?
So the integration is PSR integrates with the financial system, which issues a work order and gets the work done. And then the next level of integration is the work order, when the work is completed, is downloaded into the 3D system, which then updates the 3D picture and tells us the state of affairs of our current. I couldn't see how the PSR went directly to the 3D. It's sort of a circuitous route.
Yes, and that's the most difficult part, was connecting that piece in there, but also what we wanted to make sure is the staff outside in the field only see one system and don't have to use multiple systems, and that alleviated that for us.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you. Counselor? Others? Counselor Ribbiak?
Thank you. Just for clarity, the amount indicated, 25,440, what I'm reading is buys a program completely populated with the information that can be used immediately after the purchase, as opposed to buying a program and then having to do a lot of work in order to make it useful. So I wonder if we can get some clarity on
Ms.
that.
Pupel?
Yes, we are not buying a we already own the program that allows for 3D mapping, but we don't have the skill set or the timing to do it. It would probably take over a year if we wanted to set aside someone in a staffing role. But one of the other things I wanted to identify is the map that this system creates in the AutoCAD, Autodesk area, is the map that PSR, Ian Lucas, is now going to utilize through the back end of PSR. So when a resident clicks on something in front of their house, it actually will click right on the asset without them knowing. So it solves a whole bunch of our issues about what asset is being requested of the resident to work on.
Very good.
Interesting.
Anyone else? It sounds similar to the serving on the board of NPI, the hydro company. It sounds similar to a system that they have there. And the added benefit is they use the system on day-to-day operations, but then should there be an emergency, they immediately go to that system and check it. They know where everything is. And it's, for them, it's turned around the response time and gets them quicker than other distribution companies that kind of have to use paper and employ 6 people to come into the office to pull all these things together to figure out what's wrong. So there's lots of benefits for this, in addition to having an asset plan in 3D. So kudos to staff for working on this and bringing it forward, and kudos to the working group. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Durley. The Committee of the Whole received the October 2015 Corporate Services Monthly Report for information. And Councillor Ribiak, you had asked a question about one of these contract awards.
That's right.
I'm believing it's with this report. Go ahead, sir.
It is with this report, I guess. It's with regard to the tender amounts on the snow clearing program. There were 2 tenders provided. They were vastly different. I'm just wondering, and of course what's recommended is the much lower cost. I wouldn't mind hearing an explanation of the difference, and whether we're at any risk that we're not doing something that might have been contemplated in the other contract that we ought to have been doing. Not that I want to
Who
spend
can
money.
answer that? Ms. Clementio or Ms. Pupo?
Take a stab at it.
Ms. Clementio? Were they trying to melt the snow, the other ones, or what was going on here?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We took in the bids that came in. The lowest bidder had the contract for 3 years prior, and maybe more than that, I don't know. And consistently had no issues with budget. We reviewed the complaints that came in, the nature of them, to see if we had any concerns with whether the level of service they were providing us through that consistent budgeted amount brought any concerns to us, and it didn't. We didn't pursue things anymore with the higher bidder, except that there were some questions being bounced around through staff and otherwise, asking how there could be such a difference in what they bid. But we didn't feel it was our need to dig into it to find out what it was, where the difference in perception was. We're happy with the service that the lowest bidder had provided. Without that, we most certainly would have dug in deeper.
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others to the treasurer's report? Just on the contract awards, I did ask the treasurer to clarify the last piece about the construction management services. The only piece that's shown here is the bid amount for a portion of the work, not the score, and it was awarded on score. So I believe the treasurer's going to deal with that. So this is a reporting as opposed to the actual work. So, Madam Treasurer, it's been corrected, has it?
It has been corrected on the website, and some of the other issues that we discussed about tender amount and invitation to tender, those words are canned words in the system, but we want them changed to reflect that this is a bid process. It could be an RFP, it could be an RFQ, it could be a tender. So we don't want it to always say that it's a tender when in fact it might not have been a tender process.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Look forward to more information on the annual multi-year purchasing contracts when that comes forward to us. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's moved by Councillor Papp. The Committee of the Whole received the October 2015 Fire Services Report for information. Kudos to members of staff and the Chief for Fire Prevention Week. Great week of promotions. I believe the Chief, or actually fire staff, are going to be presenting a check to Pelham Cares tomorrow for a certain amount of money that was raised, nearly $300. Is that correct? So kudos to fire department staff for that. And I did want to say publicly, I did send an email to council. One of the police officers that was shot in that incident that's referred to in the fire chief's report did come to town hall last week and offer thanks for us sending some flowers and well wishes and prayers to him. He is recovering very well, and it was great to see him up and around. So best wishes to him. Anything further on the fire department's report? Oh, there are two, Councillor King and then Councillor Durley. Ladies first.
Not necessarily as part of the report, except that it does fall one day after October. I just want to say thank you to the Fire and Bylaw Services for the 7 volunteers that served yesterday at the fundraising event for Big Brothers Big Sisters, which was the Sisterhood of Style
that's great.
event. They were a wonderful asset to the afternoon, so thank you.
Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the fire chief, I just wonder, under projects, the outdoor skating rink that is proposed at the Station 3, is there any liability issue that might arise from that if somebody gets injured?
Chief?
The rink being, it's just a piece of flat land beside they just want to flood it, but it's just for the members themselves and their families, we're not going to open up to the public. It's not going to be like a public skating area.
What if somebody from the public just happens to come by and want to skate?
Really didn't give a whole lot of thought. I understand. You can probably just go and skate. It's all wide open at Station 3. There's no fencing, there's no guards or anything, so if we, we can defer that and we can look into it and.
I have no problem with it. It's a great idea, but I'm just wondering if something may happen in the future, if somebody falls and hurts themselves, could we be held liable?
Skate at your own risk?
It's a long shot, but it's something to think about, perhaps.
Maybe Chief, can you take that under advisement and just do a little bit more research? Thank you, Councillor Durley. Any other items? Geez, I was going to get my skates on for that one, but maybe I won't now. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It has been moved by Councillor Rivak that Committee of the Whole receive the October 2015 Human Resources Department report for information. Councillor Papp?
Very quickly, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Paula, I have to say this to you publicly. What you've done with the United Way campaign here is historic. We have never, ever reached those levels as long as I've been here, and I was a member of United Way, both staff-wise and many capacities. So a heartiest congratulations to you and the staff for their active participation. This is phenomenal. Thank you.
If I just might add through you, Mr.
Please.
Mayor, I'm very happy to say that as of this afternoon, we have hit 101% to our goal.
Oh,
So-
that's wonderful.
good.
Congratulations.
Right now, it'll just be icing on the cake.
So if I can suggest maybe, you can email Tamara, let her know,
Oh, absolutely.
because they'll be, this is phenomenal. It really is.
Thank you.
That's great, and thanks to the generosity of staff and council for this. And those that are organizing it, please pass along our thanks to Miss Amy's and Mr. Genesee. Others to the director's report? One voluntary termination, there we are. That individual moving on to back to home territory into another position.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have received our planner's exit interview results today. I have not had a chance to fully go through them, but I can tell you that he listed really 3 reasons why he was choosing another opportunity. One, it was certainly much closer to his hometown, where he wanted to go back to. Second was the compensation was higher than what we were offering. And the third piece was that he was going to report directly to his professional mentor, so someone he has a long-standing relationship with. So we wished him much success, thanked him for his time here at the town, and hopefully we'll work with him again one day.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gilbert. Appreciate that. Anything further to the director's report? Look forward to seeing the results of the benefit package. Some great work there, too. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It has been moved by Councilor Ribbiak. The Committee of the Whole received the October 2015 Public Works and Utilities Report for information. Questions, comments? Councilor Junkin.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director of Public Works, it's come to my attention that we have canceled the undercoating portion of the budget. Last year we spent approximately $3,000 undercoating all the vehicles, which I thought would be a pretty good way of protecting the town's assets. And I'm being led to understand that that wasn't done this year. I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Ms. Clemencio?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand that the undercoating is being done internally this year. The mechanic has taken on doing that task himself for the vehicles. Not all the same vehicles are being undercoated. Some of them are coming near the end of their useful service life, so we're not undercoating those. And they've come up with a list of which ones they feel the undercoating should be refreshed on, and the mechanic feels he can do this himself effectively.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay. Sorry, did I have somebody else over here? No? Councillor Ribbiak.
Mr. Mayor, I'm looking for an appropriate clause to stick my comment into, but this is with regard to ditching on Church Street, south of Foss Road, past the corner of Sumbler, south of the corner of Sumbler. You'll recall that in our last meeting we looked at the budget for ditching, and I think we, as council, turned down any overage, but as a result, some work that had been scheduled for this year did not happen, and within the rain that we had a week or so ago, there was pretty extensive flooding that occurred on one of the farms, attributable at least in part to the fact that work hadn't been done. So I don't know where exactly to go with this. I know that we turned down the request for the additional funding in our last meeting, but I wonder whether the director might comment on the extent to which additional work might be accomplished on that ditch in order to ensure that the property in the area can dry out and harvesting can go on and kind of life continue.
Ms. Clemencio?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, this is a property down south end on Church and Sumbler
Yeah,
area?
This is the southwest side of Church Street, just south of Sumbler.
So my understanding for that particular ditching area, the planned ditching maintenance work there was really for removal of vegetation, some minor intermittent ditch work. We didn't include in the tender any major ditch works to be done there, as the limitations are actually related more to the elevations of the downstream outlet. There are some challenges with the grades of the land that are of a greater scope than anything that we can fix with a ditching contract. But we were hoping to address some of his maintenance concerns with at least removing some of the vegetation and silt in some of the areas of that strip to try to alleviate the best that we could. I'm not sure ditching maintenance work there, we don't feel there's any short-term solution for the issues that are there.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm grateful that the matter is in hand and being looked at, and the property owner has been responded to, obviously, and you're working together to figure out what to do, at least provisionally, to get through this year.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we certainly are. We had before and been dealing with him since I started here as well. But like I said, there's a long-term solution that really is entirely on private lands and links into potential risks with the municipal drain. So we have been in discussion with him of some of what these long-term options might be, but it's nothing that Public Works in any sort of ditch work, there's nothing we can do with our elevations that would alleviate his problem entirely. We are simply trying to address the high risk by doing some minor vegetation work.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So is there a long-term of an improvement to that road ditch? There seemed to be a considerable belief and some evidence that the reason for the flooding was that the road ditch didn't take away the water effectively enough to prevent the flooding. Is there something that can be done? Would it be put into next year's budget?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is not long-term work that can be done on municipal property to alleviate his problem entirely. We can simply make some small adjustments, and we already have, but we can continue to be in communication with him about his options for long-term. But those seem to float around having him consider regrading part of his land so he connects to the municipal drain directly, rather than using the roadside ditch to drain that portion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you. And I did ask other staff and ask them to brief the director, but my understanding, just to underscore what the director said, is that the municipal drain, which this ditch is to outlet into, the culvert for that municipal drain is actually higher in elevation than this area. And that's the problem. So a long-term solution might be to change that culvert in the municipal drain, but it's quite a complicated process. It's not just something you just
No, I
do.
understand. And
So
even
that,
would,
so that wasn't understood when we're standing out there and at that corner.
no. Thank you. I appreciate all that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Papp?
Picking up on Councillor Ribbiak, I'm taking it to another level. I think through you, the whole drainage program in the long term needs to be assessed. I'm not going to discuss it tonight, but I've personal observations around some of the areas that I've been walking. Things are starting to block up again. And questions that residents ask is, what are you doing about clearing, the ditchways, making things, and I don't want to elaborate, but I think we need a long-term strategy. It's obvious. We had the situation the mayor and I are aware of, and Councillor Durley, where we had one before you came here, where that particular house was flooded right out. We hadn't touched it in years. And we did fix it, and we've done some work. So I agree, it's sometimes just sporadic remedial work, but I think the strategy needs to be put into place to look at how we cover it all across the board. And I just use that generally because I saw some areas along the Steve Bauer Trail, they're starting to accumulate. We could be running into problems later on, I don't know, but I think maybe we need to discuss this during budget deliberations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Can you give us an update on Roland Road? It didn't seem to be in, it just looks like the tender's out, but
Tender is not out yet. It's,
is it anticipated that that's to be done
meant
this
to
year?
go, although, based on feedback we've had, some contractors were getting late in the year. We were looking to see whether any of the contractors we've already secured for some road resurfacing work might be able to open up and add that as an extra for the sake of timing. I haven't talked yet to the treasurer about this to make sure that we're honoring our procurement policy. But it's an option, since it would save us about 3 to 4 weeks in the time to go to tender and secure, or we were looking at compressing the time. So it is designed, ready. The tender quantities I was just reviewing with the supervisor late this afternoon. So it's ready to go. We just thought we might entertain a fast track route if possible, but I've got to make sure that it would meet the procurement requirements first.
Look forward to hearing an update on that. I received an email and a couple of phone calls from a downtown Fonthill business owner north of CIBC on the east side that was wondering if there could be something done with parking, maybe a 15-minute temporary parking area for patrons unloading, going into their establishment. They might be in a wheelchair walker, and then the family member might take the vehicle around and park it around. And then also something about a green P parking symbol downtown. There is one on Pelham Town Square, but not on South Pelham. So I just ask if maybe the director, if it's okay with council, if the director could look into those two possibilities and see if it's something can be done in those locations. I know that parking issue is one thing that we've kind of kicked around for a little bit, but haven't really acted on. And then the other, I'm sure we made a resolution years ago for green P parking to direct people that don't know, and they're getting folks from outside of Pelham that don't know where the parking is and behind, And they want to see the green fee parking, so maybe if we could just add that as staff direction, just to look into that and report back to us in short order, that would be great, if that's okay. Councillor King?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to add that there is another parking issue on the other side of the street. And if we're talking about parking, perhaps we could add that to the list. And that is that plaza on the west side of Pelham, there's a few stores in there. Two of the retailers in there spoke to me last week about the fact that the bank is using their spaces for parking, when the bank, in fact, has their own parking behind their building. So it's starting to brew again. And the reason that it came to light last week is because we're trying to increase business downtown. And the two businesses that spoke to me because their business is flying, but they're having parking issues. So on one hand, we're increasing business, allowing retailers to stay in Fond Hill, but we're also allowing others to take advantage of their parking. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, I suppose.
Okay, so that might be a longer-term thing, but if it's something that staff can turn their mind to a little bit, and maybe a creative problem-solving session might be in order, Mr. Ottaway, on that. Anything further? Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried with direction. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor King. The Committee of the Whole received the October 2015 Recreation, Culture and Wellness Department report for information. Ready for calling of the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It's been moved by Councillor Durley. The Committee of the Whole received the October 2015 Clerk's Department report for information. Questions, comments? Madam Clerk, can you give us an update on the street naming issues? I think Council made a resolution early in the spring to say update looking at the names and working with the Legion, and as some new developments are going to be coming forward, I just wondered about the status of that. Are you able to?
I'll have to work with the planning department. It falls under the planning department's area for the street naming, I think.
Oh,
We had talked
okay.
about that, so I'll take it up with
Thank you.
the director.
Thanks very much. Anything further? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. The next item is the CAO's report. It's been moved by Councillor Papp that we receive it for information. Questions, comments to the CAO's report? It's a neat graphic there about usage. Are we good? There being no others, Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a very brief question. It's very interesting when we look at the metrics around the electronic communications that are out there and how the populations are engaging in it. And I wonder, what are the things that we haven't undertaken, and maybe it would be something that we could explore for 2016, is development of a Pelham app and use or open source funding, so that it's been used quite effectively in many municipalities, but in the United States, where they use open source information and it goes out to the public, and it's like a competition, and so apps and things are created for very nominal costs by members of the community. I wonder if staff might look at that and see if there's something we could do.
Thank you very much. Let's listen or get something from our Manager of Communications.
Sure. I believe that is something we have looked at through, and the treasurer can come further through the IT department and through one of our summer students who was here, who was very interested in doing something along those lines. So I think it's definitely something that we can take back and explore further. It's already been kind of talked about, but nothing formally.
That's great.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McKnight. Any others? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It has been moved by Councillor Ribbiak that this regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned until the next regular committee scheduled for Monday, November 16th, 2015, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.